physician in American College of Physicians, RSSDI. He has been awarded or felicitated by the Madras Diabetic Association. And he has been associated with many philanthropic associations, social activities, educational institutes. And now we can invite Professor Panda to have his talk.
Thank you, Dr. Manoranjan, and thanks team 7th NUCD for inviting me for the first lead talk in this very important session of clinical trials. I'm sharing my slides. My slides are visible?
Yes, yes.
Yes, Jan.
Yes.
Very much visible.
So, welcome everyone. We'll be delivering a fantastic thematic session on initiating clinical trials, because we know in this part of the world, the clinical trials are less, and somewhat our education, our approach, our medical practice doesn't include a hand-in-hand data keeping, publication, and going for new chemical entities. So I congratulate the scientific team for keeping such an important theme. And next 15-17 minutes, I'll be speaking on how in your own setup, you can go for initiating a clinical trial, which is a big innovation. And even in the advanced setup, in the big medical colleges, the number of clinical trials done are very less. So mostly I'll be concentrating on the role of investigators and how comfortably at your setup you can go for this procedure. So taking the historical perspective, the past transgenerations led to the need for the laws that protect the rights and welfare of human subjects. And if you see the history, the Nuremberg doctors' trial of 1946, the Nuremberg Code, the thalidomide tragedy, like the Kefauver-Harris Amendment, the Tuskegee experiments, Belmont report, and human radiation experiments and gene transfer experiments tell about how medical research and clinical trials are important. The GCP, or good clinical practice, is something defined which many of us don't understand. And I'm sure many of the good clinicians have not taken a formal GCP training. This is a guidance for industry, the E6 good clinical practice, or the consolidated guidance. It includes a standard for the design, conduct, performance, monitoring, auditing, recording, analysis, and the reporting of the clinical trials that provide assurance that the data and the reported results are credible and accurate, and that the rights, integrity, and confidentiality of trial subjects are protected. And this is very important in our setup. If you see the whole approach to the clinical trials. So who can be an investigator? Many times we think, can we really take up an investigation? It's a qualified physician who is responsible for all trial-related medical decisions. We must have suitable education, training, and experience in the field of being researched, must be trained in GCP and have knowledge of good clinical practice and applicable regulatory requirements, may delegate some of their responsibility to other individuals. This delegation must be documented, and these individuals must also be suitably educated and trained to perform the role. So should permit monitoring and auditing by the sponsor and inspection by the appropriate regulatory authority or authorities. So the adequate resources are important, and in defining this, the investigator should be able to demonstrate based on the retrospective data a potential for recruiting the required number of suitable subjects within the agreed recruitment period. The investigator should have sufficient time to properly conduct and complete the trial within the agreed trial period, the investigator should have available an adequate number of qualified staff and adequate facilities for the foreseen duration of the trial, conduct the trial properly and safely, and it should ensure that all persons assisting with the trial are adequately informed about the protocol, the investigational products, and the trial related duties and functions. The most important aspect of a research is the medical care of the trial subjects. A investigator or the sub-investigator of the trial is responsible for all trial-related medical decisions, and they should ensure the adequate medical care provided to subject for any adverse events, including clinically significant laboratory values, and they should inform subject when a medical care is needed for the intercurrent illness which the investigator becomes aware. It's recommended that the investigator inform the subject's primary physician about the subject's participation in the trial if the subject has a primary physician, and if the subject agrees to primary physician being informed. And although a subject not obliged to give his or his reasons for withdrawing prematurely from a trial, the investigator should make reasonable effort to ascertain the reasons while fully respecting the subject's rights. The communication of the investigator to institutional ethics committee or the regulatory board is equally important. Before initiating a trial, they should have written and dated approval opinion from the IEC or IRB for the trial protocol, written informed consent form, consent form updates, subject recruitment, procedures like advertisement and any other written information to be provided to the subject. As part of the investigator's written application to the regulatory board, the investigator should provide with a current copy of brochure and brochure updated during the trial. The investigator should supply a copy of the updated investigator's the document to the ethics committee. The compliance with the protocol is very important. Should conduct the trial in compliance with the protocol agreed by the sponsor, if required by the regulatory authority, and which was given approval or a favorable opinion by the IEC. The investigator sponsor should sign a protocol, an alternative contact to confirm the agreement, and the investigator should not implement any deviation from or change of protocol without agreement by the sponsorer. So the most important is documentation, because whatever we see in the subject, whatever the institutional ethics committee is reported with, and whatever observations are made in the trial are to be properly documented with the team, and they are designated by the investigator, and they should document and explain everything, including the deviations from the protocol. The investigational product, the responsibility of investigational products accountability in the trial site is with the investigator, and the pharmacist or the appropriate individual who is designated by the investigator has to maintain the investigational products and the inventory at the site and used by each subject, and the return to the sponsor or alternative disposition of the unused products. I'll give you an example here. Like, we are doing a trial of Itolizumab in the COVID-19 at SAB Medical College. We applied to our ethics committee, and along with AIIMS Bhubaneswar, SAB was allowed to conduct the clinical trial. So we have the team who have received the investigational product. We are using it in critically sick patients in the ICU, and the monitoring, use of the drug, and the response is all documented. So we are keeping a record that the reactions, the response, the improvement, which are noted very carefully. And after around 20 sites in the India, which are approved by the DCGI, a final call will be taken regarding the use. Though it's late, we have taken this intervention for the cytokine storm. Similarly, we have taken another landmark product for the clinical trial at SAB, that is liraglutide. And this product was taken at primary care setup where the glycemic control was not adequate. Patient was with metformin and other oral drugs, and we added liraglutide. And in a 2-year study, we have seen the response, and this is a published data already. So conducting the trial, keeping the products with responsibility, putting your team for the coordination of the whole system is very, very important. And the most important challenge comes to analyze the taken data and to conclude regarding safety and efficacy of the investigational product. The process of randomization and the unblinding are equally important. Suppose we want to give oral tablets or injectable investigational drug or other drugs to a subject, we have to take the randomization process, which do it at random without any bias. And we should ensure that the code is broken only in accordance with the protocol. The trial is blinded, and the investigator should promptly document and explain to the sponsor any premature unblinding, accidental unblinding, and unblinding due to the serious adverse event of the investigational product. There are a few exceptions where you can unblind the procedure. And the informed consent of the subject or trial are equally important. And now it's mandatory that the whole process of informed consent is video recorded. So prior to the beginning of the trial, we have to explain the whole procedure to the subject, and then we have to take written approval and the opinion in the written informed consent from any other written informed to be provided to the subject. And written informed consent has to be signed by the witness, and it has to be provided to the subjects revised when important new informations come. Suppose there is a newer development in the subject, that has again to be informed to the ethics committee and also to the subject, and a new consent has to be taken. So in every phase of clinical trial, it's important that we involve the subject, involve the party, and nor the trial staff should coerce or unduly influence a subject to participate or continue to participate in a trial. Records and reports are equally important. We have to maintain the record of everything that has happened, including the adverse reactions, including the investigations which are done from time to time, including the withdrawal of the patient or any important development in the clinical trial. Record keeping, getting it shined from time to time and getting registered, all the developments with the institutional ethics committee makes a sense. And this record is maintained not only till the end of the study, but even after the study for years, for any other reference by the DCGI and the other regulatory authorities. We should take a measurement to prevent accidental or premature destruction of the documents, and it's retained until at least 2 years and up to 15 years of the closure of the study, and there is no pending or the contemplated marketing applications at least for 2 years, and the financial aspect of the trial be documented in the agreement between the sponsor and the investigator. Upon request of the monitor, the auditor, the ethics committee, the regulatory authority, the investigator should make available these records to everyone. That's a very important part of the study. And finally, the progress report. We should submit the written summaries of the trial starters to the ethics committee annually or more frequently if requested by the ethics committee. And the investigator should promptly provide written reports to the sponsor or any changes significantly affecting conduct of the trial or increasing the risk of the subject. So to say a clinical trial is very easy to conduct if you have a team, a co-investigator, a trial manager, and then subjects. Suppose I'm giving the example of SCB Medical College. We have huge number of patients. It's a primary care setup, and we get subjects very easily if we take consent of them, explain them the study protocol, take them through a informed consent, and our team help us who are all through in good clinical practice. Then the trial drug comes. which drug is dispensed, and time to time the investigation and the clinical parameters are recorded, and finally it's handed over for a combined analysis of the data, and the regulatory authorities are informed for any issues related to the side effects, related to the withdrawal of the subject, related to the development of the study. So even in a small setup, if you see in India, few centers have made a big name. I'll not hesitate to take the name of M. Vishwanathan Sher, who long back started the clinical trials and the clinical research, and has set an example which has been carried forward by Dr. Mohan and the group, and Dr. Ramchandran and the group, who has encouraged this, and along with him Professor Shashank Joshi, Dr. Bansi Sabu, and many key opinion leaders in the field. Not only they conduct studies, they encourage research, and they launch. And the final example comes from the COVID-19 drugs. If you remember, initially, whatever came, maybe lopinavir, antiviral, favipiravir, remdesivir, all are repurposed drugs or off-label drugs. There is no trial for phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, phase 4 trials. And we went through use of that drug for the benefit of the patient and the control of the pandemic. And finally, a convalescent plasma therapy come, and that also came in the form of a clinical trial by ICMR. And you know, the present vaccination today, whole India rolls out the vaccination. We have Covishield and Covaxin with us, and the vaccine takes minimum 10 years to be developed, and with a very hasty and a quick work of clinical documentation. In 10 months time, we have a vaccine, and this whole process of vaccination again comes in the process of clinical trial. So say it a drug, say it a vaccine, it gets the permission of DCGI, the regulatory authorities, for the use when there is an emergency need, with proper safety and efficacy in mind. And this gives the example how methodically, how systematically we can study some drug for some purpose, some indications, and conduct it. And to summarize, our own centers, before I end, I'll tell a word about the safety reporting. I have already told, all serious adverse events are reported to the institution as well as to the trial authority, and they should also comply with the applicable regulatory requirement, and the precautions are taken at all the sites. So there should not be any untoward development. For that, you know, we are all prepared, not only for reporting, for intervening this. So the premature termination or the suspension of trial is one part. If the trial prematurity is terminated or suspended for any reason, promptly it has to be informed to the trial subjects, the regulatory authority, and to the regulatory board also. Because if we get a obvious result, the trial may not be required. If we get a serious adverse event, the trial may not be required. So the final report by the investigator upon completion of the trial is given, and it should provide the ethics committee with a summary of the trial's outcome, and regulatory authority report is required. So at the end, I'm telling, ladies and gentlemen, we have to develop a bent of mind for a trial of new chemical entity, and all our center which are attached to ethics committee can take up the challenge, take up the issue of trying new drugs. What are the drugs we are having? We have saved lakhs and crores of life by using the antivirals, using the convalescent plasma, using the drugs like low molecular heparin and steroids. And then, you know, the pandemic was new, and it's a challenge for the whole globe. Had we not worked so fast, working out the new entities and extrapolated their effects in our pandemic situation, would have not shaped so many lives. So we have to be alert to add new drugs to our basket, and we have to take drugs properly and document it, keep our team ready, involve the ethics committee, and follows the good clinical practice step by step. With this, I'll end, and I'll expect this will give you an insight regarding how to go with the clinical trials with the newer drugs, and we'll be happy if this session inspires you to take up the job at your end. Thank you all. Thanks NUCD again for this opportunity.